This is Nier Automata and Japan's Secret Abandoned City. It's by Midnight Kotatsu. I think I Kotatsu. I've never watched this guy before, but let's see if it's interesting. Since it's a very near day. Where are we going?
Decades ago, the people of this isolated Japanese island suddenly vanished, leaving behind an entire city now frozen in time. And so I've come here to answer the question that now hides within its ruins, the same one at the heart of Nier Automata.
Where is to be?
Nier Automata is one of the most complex and philosophical works of modern Japanese media. A game that confronts us with questions about war, abandonment, and the search for meaning in a world that may not have one. For nearly a decade, players have argued over what this game is really trying to say.
You just die already!
And so, by coming to this abandoned city, and by uncovering the strange history of what brought it to ruin, I hoped to understand what truly lies at the heart of this game.
How did this guy get access?
Why did you betray us?
For what began on the quiet shores of this island led me far deeper than I expected. From forgotten sites across Japan to places on the other side of the world, slowly bringing me closer to understanding not just this game, but the real stories, places, and ideas that inspired this elusive Japanese masterpiece.
And myself. As a person who I want to be in the world.
Heading to this island, we had very little idea what to expect. Known as Ikeshima, it's located about 7 kilometers off the western coast of Japan.
I've never heard of
in
this place
Nagasaki.
before.
And with a population of less than 100 people, it's now almost
people
completely
live there?
abandoned.
I thought it was like completely abandoned.
Go in. Yeah. It's scary. This is my office. Welcome.
Okay.
Is it comfortable?
It's actually crazy how overgrown it is. Because that tech
I'm
looks
really scared the floor's
kind of recent. Not that recent.
Like, look how high up we are.
You know? In the end, nature claims all me just now. Don't steal it, it's copywritten.
What the?
It's definitely not.
What the?
Oh, language.
Yeah, we're definitely just gonna
God,
get
what
tetanus
the
if
hell?
we go in there.
Okay.
It's so tiny.
This was a place unlike anywhere we had ever been, and as we began exploring more of the island, we quickly realized just how much of it there was to uncover. With nature having all but taken over, many of the old roads and pathways were now completely inaccessible.
Oh, he's
but
getting close to
we still
stealing your
managed to
quote.
find a lot of what remained. Ruined industrial buildings, massive pieces of machinery, just so many cats.
Cats. There's so many.
So it appears
They're so
I've made a
cute.
friend.
With each new place we stumbled upon, we had new questions about what happened to the people that lived here, and why it looked the way it did. And I also had a great time flying our drone.
Oh. Well.
But after a quick 5-hour side quest through a forest and 60 feet up the side of a crumbling building, we got the drone back. What struck us most about this island, though, besides the
I really
near-death
think I maybe a different
experiences,
one.
was just
Maybe.
how much it actually felt like stepping into the world of the game, which was not something we were really expecting going into this.
They're not even dressed up.
Taking
could've dressed
place
up
in
like-
the ruins of an abandoned city far into humanity's future, the world and atmosphere of Nier Automata is one
They could've
that's
dressed up.
industrial and empty. Just like
What do you mean?
Ikeshima, all that's left to explore here are the hollow remains of machinery and slowly collapsing infrastructure, the remnants of an ongoing war which we're thrown into from the very start of the game. In this world, we're told that humanity has fled to the moon following an alien
moon, it's
invasion that
true.
began centuries ago.
Oh,
And
that's what
after
they
the
want you to
aliens
believe.
built machine life forms to fight for them, humanity then developed androids in response.
Whoa.
And so it's this proxy war of machines that we find ourselves in,
Okay,
following 2B
You know, I
and
feel like
9S,
I should say
two
this.
androids from a robotic
I feel
military
like this, the moon android, I feel a little attacked. Okay, I made my lore before I played this game. We just happened to overlap a little
built to
bit.
defend
Okay,
mankind.
just a little bit.
Request assistance.
As the game
Just
progresses,
a
you
tiny
travel
bit.
across the ruins of this world as these two characters,
We have similar
carrying
motifs,
out
is
missions for
all.
humanity, discovering new areas, and ultimately uncovering a strange process of evolution within the machine life forms.
Child.
But beneath the story that unfolds
That's where that
lies a
bucket.
landscape that remains eerily empty throughout Nier. And rather than being filled with moments of interaction or discovery like a typical open world
User
game,
cyborg?
instead,
I
what we're
don't
left
know.
with here is a lingering soundtrack
Perhaps
and this
you don't
looming
listen to me.
sense
No, I'm
of
kidding.
abandonment
I'm kidding.
and isolation. A feeling that becomes deeply important to the story that follows, and
Ow.
to what makes Nier so strangely connected to the history of this island.
Fire.
So one thing that I haven't mentioned yet
Whoa.
is that it was insanely hot on this island, like 40 degrees Celsius. And by the end of filming, I actually got
104.
heat stroke, and I didn't eat for like
What
3 days
are
after,
you?
which is apparently something that can happen. But it is winter now, and I can eat again, which is why it's lucky that this video is sponsored by Tokyo Treat. Tokyo Treat are a monthly Japanese snack box service.
He got
They
us.
send you a
He
box
got us.
straight from Japan every month. It's
Oh,
filled
oh.
with limited edition snacks.
I'm
Japan-
sneezing. I'm
In
sneezing.
our description below. Right now,
that
we're
bag.
walking through the remains of these reinforced concrete buildings on the western side of the island. There's just over 50 of them in total, and they're all quite clearly numbered, forming this strange kind of regimented city. And the reason for this is that they used to be apartment buildings designed specifically to house the island's core population of mine workers.
And so this is why Ikeshima's landscape appears so industrial today. This small decaying city, along with almost all of the infrastructure left on the island, including shops, hospitals, and even a school, were constructed with a singular function in mind: to serve a giant coal mine that was set up here in the 1950s, one that can be found at the very heart of Ikeshima.
And
So it was
it's absolutely
money.
massive. Construction on it finished in 1959, and it went on for 42 years, making it the last of its kind to essentially operate in Japan.
For more
Emptied
than
the
4
mines out and
decades,
left.
an entire
Yeah,
community
I
of
think
almost
so.
10,000 people at its peak was built around it. But one day, just over 23 years ago, that all changed, and almost overnight, the mine and the island it was built on was left behind.
Damn, that's fucked up. I feel like it'd be a pretty place to live.
Are they dead?
2B, look!
Destroyed alien motherships.
Welcome
Eh.
to the graveyard of our creators.
Hey guys.
Abandonment in Nier Automata is something that defines not just the game's setting, but the very foundations of its story, and we're shown our first proper glimpse of this in the initial twist of the game, where it's revealed that the aliens our characters are supposedly fighting have long been dead, killed by the very same machines they created.
You destroyed your own creators? Oh, there's no need to fret.
They got my ass with this twist.
This
By
is
the
a
way.
truth that reframes the entire mission 2B and 9S have been on,
They got my
forcing them
ass
to
so bad
reconsider
with
the
this.
nature of this war and the enemies that they've refused to see as conscious until now.
Doesn't matter how much oil you give him, little guy. You can't make a machine your brother.
But it also sets into motion a much deeper idea within the game. Because as the story progresses and we live the same events again, but now through the eyes of 9S, we start to see that things aren't quite as they seemed, and that something far more unsettling exists beneath this world.
Looks like info about how the Council of Humanity was formed as part of Project Yora. Wait, isn't that backwards?
As these characters continue on their mission to defend mankind and remain completely loyal to their creators, quietly, almost in the background to the main conflict, a darker truth is revealed to 9S.
So did Yorha actually create the Council of Humanity?
Yes.
But that means...
Mankind no longer exists.
They
In
did.
truth, humans were already extinct when the aliens attacked.
But why?
No one fights without a reason. And we need a god worth dying for.
This, then, seems to be the idea at the heart of Nier Automata, that for these characters, God is dead. Humanity, their creators, no longer exist, and so, left without a reason to go on living, the androids simply carried on pretending like that weren't the case.
The smiley
This is, of
faces.
course, a deeply profound and philosophical idea, and one that we're going to try to explore further. Which begs the
Classic.
question of how exactly Ikeshima helps us
Fuck
to
those
understand.
guys.
In the wake of World War II, Japan needed urgently to rebuild, and without any domestic oil, they turned to coal mining for their energy. This was an industry that skyrocketed through the 1940s and 50s, but it involved a process that was dirty, labor-intensive, and wildly dangerous. And so, by 1959, when Ikeshima was finally made operational, coal had already begun to decline as the nation's main source of energy.
Damn.
Being one of the
That
last
sucks.
mines ever constructed in Japan, it was built as the industry was dying. And in the decades that followed, Japan's mines were shut down one by one, until eventually, in 2001, Ikeshima too was brought to a close, leaving massive amounts of infrastructure, machinery, and people without a purpose. And so, it's here that Nier Automata begins to align closely with Ikeshima's history. Because this story is also one of a gradual and deepening collapse. First, of the war our characters are fighting, in learning that it's fundamentally based on
Just
a
a
lie.
couple. Oh
And then
god.
also of your the entire android command structure, which later falls to corruption. For 9S,
Hey, John,
this
welcome
collapse then
here. We're watching
deepens
some
even further
videos.
with
We're
the
watching
loss
this about
of his
Nier.
only companion. And by the end of the story, he's left without purpose or meaning, abandoned by his institution, his companion,
Same.
and ultimately, the god he was built to serve.
If it matters, we aren't required in this world anymore.
In this way, Ikeshima doesn't just seem to reflect the setting and atmosphere of Nier Automata, but its narrative too, as an island of machinery now entirely left behind. We seem to be left with a question then. That if God is dead, if there's no higher purpose for our existence, then what reason is there to go on living? This is ultimately what Nier Automata seems to ask us.
There he goes to
But
get more
there's
oil.
actually another important question here that I want to address first.
Oh.
Because as philosophical as this game might seem, if you didn't know, the person responsible for creating it, Yoko Taro, is actually a deranged bullheaded man.
Okay, don't call him that. Okay, maybe he is that.
This creates a bit of a problem for us.
Okay.
What fans often argue about this game is that its themes and story aren't just random, but based very specifically on philosophies and ideas from different parts of history, and most of all, on the philosophy of existentialism, a movement that emerged in response to thinkers like Soren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche.
Same person. Okay.
But while it's easy to find direct parallels like this throughout Nier, Yoko Taro makes it hard to know how intentional they really are, and how seriously we can actually take this game. When
Yeah,
asked about
he's
2D's
attacking that
design,
guy.
for example, and why she wears heels instead of something more practical, his response was basically just that he really likes girls. I mean, something I knew nothing about is that there's also a secret boss battle
I
where
remember
the CEO
this.
of Square Enix literally descends from the sky himself to fight you.
We have to defeat
I mean,
him
like, literally,
to
why
get
would they do this?
the next
They fire
game.
their heads at you. That's what they shoot at you, their heads. There's another guy as well.
I don't know who this guy is. Platinum Games.
It seems then we're left with the question of whether this game is a philosophical masterpiece or nothing more than the mindless decisions of a crazy man.
It can be both.
But luckily, there is a way for us to find out which. We just have to travel somewhere very, very far away. Please support us on Patreon. This was a stupid decision. Paris,
Oh.
the London of France. A city where rats can cook, the architecture is immaculate, and nobody explains anything because you're already supposed to know. And so I've come here not just to figure out why 2B wears a French maid outfit, but to uncover a far more direct influence on this game. One that helps us answer the existential question at its core.
And specifically, I've come to an area known as Saint-Germain-des-Prés, a neighborhood at the very heart of Paris, where for decades famous artists, musicians, and writers have gathered. And there's a very specific reason why.
Bless you.
As we've seen from Yoko Taro's layered and often cryptic game design, Nier Automata is filled with specific philosophical references. In addition to Kierkegaard and Nietzsche, throughout the world you can also find machine life forms that seem to be named after other European philosophers, like Blaise Pascal, Friedrich Engels, and Karl Marx. And while they're no doubt meant to reflect a deeper engagement with questions about belief, identity, and meaning, there are two philosophers we see referenced here that I think hold a deeper significance than it would seem, those being Simone de Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre.
And it was at these two cafes behind me, Les Deux Magots and Café des Fleurs, where these philosophers first formulated their ideas.
Must be crazy reputation to have.
So we're currently sat in Café des Fleurs. This is a spot in France that's been frequented by artists and intellectuals for decades, like Ernest Hemingway, Miles Davis, and Albert Camus. But this exact spot where I'm sitting right now is actually where Jean-Paul Sartre used to sit, and where he wrote his magnum opus on being and nothingness, the 700-page absolute unit of a book that
How did
essentially
he sit there?
gave
How did
birth
he
to the existentialist movement.
I go there
Sartre
often.
was a very smart man who, as far as I can tell, wasn't particularly associated with top hats. But
Yeah,
in
I'm
the
a regular
game,
here.
He's referenced with this distinguished machine, Jean-Paul, who spouts random Sartrean phrases at you and makes you deliver mail to his adoring fans without ever moving from his comfy spot in Pascal's village. And this is actually very similar to Sartre himself. It's said that he practically lived at this cafe.
But the other notable writer who often joined him here was Simone de Beauvoir, an icon of existentialist and feminist thought.
And she takes a larger role in the game, being referenced with one of the first major bosses,
kill
Simone,
her.
a machine that's become obsessed with beauty and self-image, a clear homage to Beauvoir's writing on identity and gender. These two were essentially the mother and father of the modern existentialist movement, and holding a lifelong partnership, one that the game also alludes to, you can now find them buried in Paris together. But this still leaves the question of what exactly their philosophy was, and whether I really needed to come here to just sit around and talk about it. At the core of existentialism is a simple idea, and is the very first thing that Jean-Paul says to us in the game, that existence precedes essence, meaning that first we simply just exist, and only then do we find meaning. This is essentially what our characters are faced with in the game. In learning that humanity has been dead for thousands of years, they're faced with the truth that their existence had no inherent meaning or purpose to begin with, and as a result, they're now left with the task of finding their own reasons for existing, to give meaning to their lives themselves. But there's also a deeper context to this philosophy, one that seems relevant both to our understanding of Nier and to why I came to Paris in the first place.
Because existentialism wasn't born in a
Bird.
vacuum
It was a
as the
pigeon in the
purely
back.
abstract ponderings of a man in a cafe. Instead, it emerged under the weight of violence, oppression, and occupation.
Between 1940 and 1944, France was under occupation following their defeat in World War II. For these 4 years, the city was governed under direct German military authority, and while Paris remained physically intact, daily life was heavily restricted. Newspapers and radio were censored, Jewish citizens were systematically arrested, and acts of resistance were met with imprisonment or execution.
For many living in the city, the occupation created a sense of existential despair. People had to wrestle with the fact that old systems of meaning, politics, religion, even nationalism had collapsed.
And so, it was within this context that both Sartre and Beauvoir formed their ideas on existentialism, a context that Yoko Taro seems clearly aware of in Nier Automata.
Remember your pain. The pain of having your homeland stolen.
Not only is this game set against the backdrop of an endless war, but one that's said to take place in the year 19,945, echoing directly the concluding year of World War II. And as 2B, 9S and A2 struggle through this conflict, we see them face similar conditions. The total collapse of authority, the loss of those they love, circumstances that seem to grow more and more dire. Within this desperation, they're ultimately forced to act alone, with no higher command to turn to and no moral certainty to fall back on. And it's here that the deeper significance of existentialism becomes clearer. Because what this philosophy ultimately states is that it's our actions and our choices that over time form the meaning of our lives. After Sartre's release as a prisoner of war, himself and Beauvoir continued developing ideas that were starkly defiant. Sartre's play The Flies, for example, directly explored themes of freedom and responsibility under oppression. And this defiance was taken even further by other existentialists like Albert Camus, who risked his own life working as editor of the underground resistance newspaper, Combat. Together, these responses echo the idea at the core of this philosophy, that meaning isn't something you discover in the world. Instead, it's something that emerges gradually from what you repeatedly choose to care about. It's in who we protect, what we sacrifice, and ultimately in how we choose to live that we shape the meaning of our lives.
A future is not given to you. It is something you must take for yourself.
But as Nier Automata goes on to show us, often in times of war and hopelessness, this responsibility can be too heavy to bear.
We're back.
Sitting quietly on the edge of Nagasaki Prefecture, these forgotten ruins mark the final location on our journey through Nier Automata. And while they look like something straight out of the game, they actually bring us deeper into the war that seemed to influence it. Because this overgrown building and the concrete structures that extend into the sea are what now remain of the Katashima torpedo test site, a World War II era facility that was designed for the construction and testing of underwater weaponry. But in its final years of operation, this site took on a far darker purpose. It was here that Japan tested Kaiten, manned torpedoes designed specifically for suicide missions. Kaiten itself meaning the turning of heaven's will. With these weapons, pilots were permanently sealed inside, where they would guide the torpedoes directly into enemy ships, with no possibility of escape. By the time the Kaiten program was introduced in 1944, Japan's naval situation had become desperate, and as a result, the Kaiten pilots, alongside other suicide forces like the Kamikaze, came to represent one of the most extreme expressions of devotion in this war. And it's not hard to see how they're reflected in Nier. In the first half of the game, we see 2B and 9S function quite literally as kamikaze fighters, repeatedly sacrificing themselves and their memories for the cause they've been assigned. It's only when things start to fall apart that they recognize the endless cycle of violence they're a part of, a cycle that 2B later dies within, while 9S, having learned the truth, faces an even more tragic end. Overcome with rage and nihilism, he ultimately fails to find meaning for himself, instead pursuing a blind path of revenge, where his actions are blamed solely on his enemies.
Don't you dare talk to me about 2B!
A path that eventually ends in his destruction. It's through the tragedy of these characters, then, that Nier Automata quietly builds an existentialist warning about violence. That when we fail to take responsibility for our own meaning,
what he said is just a desperate attempt.
Systems, causes, or emotions, violence becomes easier. Because when no one feels personally responsible, no one stops. Today, the ruins of this test site have been left to quietly fade away, and perhaps intentionally. In the years since the war, many of the suicide pilots who survived recounted the immense pressure and obligation they felt in choosing to enlist, essentially having to convince themselves of their need to die. And for many, what remained after was not honour, but guilt, disillusionment, and meaninglessness.
No way. My son, you are the ammo, sadly. Yeah. It's a peaceful day. I did not see any family members, but I freely chatted with several people close to me. I was able to spend a pleasant time. Even though I will not be able to see them again if I leave today, there was no prompting in the least of sadness or pity. To a marvelous degree, we were able to part while having a friendly talk. For me, I do not feel at all I will die within a week from now. Furthermore, I also have not any agitation and pity. However, when I calmly imagine my final moment, I feel that it all seems like a dream. Even I do not know whether or not I will be calm in this way until the moment that I die, but it seems like it will be unexpectedly easy. Yeah, I could not imagine the position that these people were put into. No, date of death 1929, 1945. Well.
When we first encounter A2 in the game, she exists outside the conflict entirely. Being the sole survivor of a failed suicide mission, she now remains disillusioned and hostile to both sides, no longer believing in the war or that her actions can affect any change. But it's through her story that the question at the heart of Nier Automata of how to move forward in the face of meaninglessness finally seems to be given an answer. As A2's journey progresses, slowly we see her anger and emptiness begin to shift. Rather than pursuing revenge, A2 starts to act in ways that reduce the suffering around her.
Hud, take care of Nines.
And what this path ultimately amounts to is her choice to bring the entire conflict to an end, even at the cost of her own life, and with no certainty that the world after will be any better.
I never quite realized how beautiful this world is.
This then leads to the final hidden ending of the game, a bullet hell taking place through the credits that poses an escalating and impossible challenge.
I could have beat it if I really wanted to.
To increase, and you die over and over again until eventually help begins to arrive, offered anonymously by other players who made the same journey before you. With their help, you finally succeed, and at the end, you're given a choice: to delete your own save file, something that takes multiple playthroughs to complete, so that someone else can receive this same help. And it's here that the true message of Nier Automata emerges. If you were to walk through an abandoned island of your own life, looking back on everything it held, it might be easy to fall into despair,
this video.
to get the sense that without a higher purpose, in the end, none of it really mattered. But what Nier Automata shows us is that this same absence of meaning is exactly what gives our lives weight. We have only the choices that we make to find meaning for our lives, and while that is a terrifying freedom to accept, this game shows us one possible way of using it: by choosing compassion and shaping a life through how we care for others.
Wow. Or what a great video. Super informative. Oh. That was a really good video. I thought it was just gonna be kind of like a silly video about the, you know, the island and visiting it and maybe talking to, I think he said there was like 100 people still that live there. Maybe like speaking to some of the locals and stuff, but this is really good. This was really good. I already liked it. Sheesh, that's how good it was. I preemptively liked it, I guess. Oh.